E te whanau, no mai, haere mai, tō mai, and join us for another week of Paranormal Pals podcast. And she just made it with a second to spare, Tash. Well done.
Some technical difficulties, as per usual.
All right, well, I hope everyone's had a good week. So we're just going to kick right off with it. Anyone got any paranormal news at all? No?
Not me.
I got a little.
The Amy Bruni thing that I forgot about.
I read something today about the crew of the Holzer Files, Dave Schrader and Cindy Kaiser and Shane Pittman. They've actually just finished filming their first series for a new show that's coming out. So that should be quite cool.
It will be good.
But other than that, we're going to kick off today with
I have some news.
You got news? Go.
Amy Bruni supposedly in her 300-year-old house.
Yes.
And I think she's in Connecticut. No, she's in Rhode Island. Is supposedly haunted.
Yes, I read that. Yeah, she's seen a doppelganger of her husband
And
or boyfriend or partner.
And a weird coin showing up at her house.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So that should be, I'm sure she's going to get the gear out and go hard with that one.
Maybe, since she's seen a doppelganger, maybe she listened to us a few weeks ago.
She could have too. Yeah, good point, Barbara, good point. Hey, we got a really interesting podcast this week. Barbara's going to take us through the history and the alleged ghost sightings and the investigations that she's held, and they've been multiple ones, at Napier Prison, one of New Zealand's paranormal hotspots. So Barbara has a presentation for us that we're going to go through and learn it all.
Sure have. I've just realised we should have practiced this earlier, folks, because how do I? Oh, here we go. Look at that.
Well,
it's nice and easy. Yeah. All right. Okay. We're away. Awesomeness. Okay. So Napier Prison for Paranormal Pals. So Napier Prison was one of New Zealand's oldest correctional facilities, and it was one of the few locations in the country where executions were carried out. And it is reputed to be one of New Zealand's most haunted locations. Now, it's not only paranormal investigators who say this, but many of the visitors and staff at the facility have experienced paranormal activity while there. So I could talk for hours about this place, about anything and everything, because it's just such a fascinating place. But for tonight, I'm going to try and stick with the history, the prison complex itself, and I'll try and explain that to you. We'll talk about the hangings and the people who were hung, and the stories about the place, both the general activity, but also things that I've seen, that I've spoken to people about, and the other team members have experienced. So the team that I was with was also joined by mediums Sue Nicholson and Craig Wright for one of the investigations that we did there, and we sort of followed them around and listened to what they said, and then we were able to try and corroborate what they were saying with our equipment. I've actually overnighted in various cells, always a different cell, of course, probably 5 or 6 times since the first time I visited in about 2013, I think, was the first one. So, that's working. That's good. So I'll be showing you some photos tonight. Now, most of them are mine, and some were taken by Ian Quigley, my partner at Paranormal Researchers NZ, and he's a photographer, so you will know, and a videographer, so you will notice some are quite good and some are not so good. One or two of them are from other sources, but I'll credit them as we go along. And this particular one I stole from Te Papa. Okay, it's a photo showing the site, including the actual prison as it was in the late 1800s or early 1900s. There was no date on it. So this particular area was known to Maori as Hokarere, and it holds deep significance both culturally and spiritually. It was once a home to a whare wanaga, sorry if I've said that wrong, I'm really sorry, which is a house of learning, and the sacred area of Tuhinapo, in a tapu place where tōpanga used to use the stars to assist with customary planting, harvesting and fishing activities. And then from that area, basically that hill where the prison is, they would offer the first fruits of the season at an altar. Archaeological evidence reveals car sites, Maori terracing and midden deposits on the steep surrounding slopes. So it's the land that the prison is built on is definitely rich in Maori heritage. Now, when the prison opened in 1862, it was actually just a single building designed to accommodate 14 prisoners. And within a year, it was already full. And they constructed a second wing in 1863, and that increased the capacity to 125 inmates. Now, these inmates were men, women, and children. Then,
what would children do? Children in a prison?
Yes,
stealing bread.
That sucks.
I'm not quite sure why, but apparently that is so. And when we were with the psychics at the prison, Craig said when we were looking at one particular part that there were children there, and he felt as though they were talking about having their teeth or having teeth removed as a punishment. Like I said, I mean, we could not corroborate anything that was said, but it's one of those interesting things about the prison. Yeah. So anyway, by 1869, a third wing was added, and that was used as a lunatic asylum for people with mental health issues. And then from the mid-1890s, inmates began quarrying stone from a newly opened prison quarry. And they used that stone to build the boundary and retaining walls, which were completed in the early 1900s. Now, if you remember, I'll just quickly show you this again. That wall went all the way around the prison. And each of those rocks or bricks or whatever you'd like, blocks, I guess, was handcrafted by the prisoners. You know, it was quarried and handcrafted by the prisoners. And every single one is a little bit different. Some of them have got initials carved into them. Some of them have got little decorations in them. Really fascinating when you stop and think that so much work would have gone into that. Okay. Sorry, now I've lost my place. All right. Lunatic asylum. Now this is interesting too. So then, in 1875, a separate lunatic asylum was constructed at the northern end of the prison. But then in the early 1900s, 3 warders' cottages were built using timber salvaged from the original asylum. And that's quite interesting because today one of those buildings does have apparitions appear every so often. Anyway, the prison population grew and eventually it housed over 120 prisoners. After serving 131 years as a prison and a lunatic asylum, Napier Prison was officially closed in 1993. At the time, it was the oldest operational prison in New Zealand, and the last 56 inmates and 19 staff were transferred to Mangaroa Prison. The building was then used for remand prisoners and as an alcohol treatment centre, and also a police lockup. Then in 2002, the saviours of the prison, Toro and Marion Waka, leased the property as they saw the prison as not only having potential as a tourist site, but also they wanted to preserve the history and the stories of the prisoners incarcerated there, and also the stories of the staff. They opened the prison firstly as a backpackers accommodation, as when I first met the prison, when we had a family event there and we went to stay there. And then as a tourist operation in which visitors could learn about what was described in 1990 as the worst prison in New Zealand. In 2006, the complex was actually used as a set, I'm going the wrong way, as a set for the Redemption Hill series. If you remember Redemption Hill, it was quite a long time ago now, but 10 wayward teenagers were sent there to try and get licked into shape, basically. I'll talk more about that later. Toro and Marion offered ghost tours and added an escape rooms actually to the place. Marion, bless her soul, who has since passed away, Toro and their staff were always respectful of any event they held and any event that they spoke of as happening in the prison, respectful of the deaths that took place there. Unfortunately, due to the deterioration of the building and the walls and the ongoing health and safety issues, the prison was forced to close on April the 14th, 2024. That is over its 162 years. The complex and the buildings had been used as a prison, a lunatic asylum, an orphanage, a police lockup and remand centre, a backpackers, and a popular tourist operation. And along the way, it gained the reputation as one of New Zealand's most haunted buildings. Right, so here's a map of how the prison looked at its closure. If you notice, there's a dome, what is called the dome in the middle, and I've got a story about that for later on. And it has wings running off it with the cells actually. Oh, how did that end up sideways?
Ghosts.
It actually, this is really difficult because that should not be there. That's not for quite some time. So that's going to be quite interesting, and we will see how this comes out. So, all right, in 1931, the Hawke's Bay earthquake, magnitude 7.8, damaged much of Napier, including the prison. The damage caused by the quake meant that some of the walls collapsed, and there were prisoners escape, while some other prisoners in one wing were unable to get out of their cells for quite some time. Today, the damage in the building can still be seen, with warped walls and twisted floors being evident when looking down the long hallways. And that, you can kind of see that it's slightly buckled, slightly twisted. Damage from the earthquake, coupled with the deterioration of the aging building, led to this prison not being the secure lockup it was supposed to be. We've heard stories of prisoners letting themselves out and going into town for the night, to the pub and having a few drinks, and even going out to get KFC to bring back into the prison.
Barbara?
Yeah?
Good old KFC.
I've actually spoken to a guy who was in Napier Prison. before it shut, and he confirmed that actually did happen. He did it himself.
Yeah. Okay, guys, I'm going to see. I'm very nervous as to see what's going to come next. Okay, that's another example of the hallway. You can when you're actually there, you can actually see that it's slightly off camber. Okay, this one is the complex. This is the one that should have been before the earthquake. So it goes with this. Okay, hang on, I'll skip that for you. All right, so there's the prison complex as it was, and that's the dome and the different cells. And the complex actually at that time, at the time it closed, had the cells. They had men's and women's cells in different wings. They had gang areas, one corridor which was mainly for the gangs. They had a suicide watch cell, and of course, well, what had been the death row cells. Of course, they didn't have that when the prison closed. There's the hanging yard, and it was actually called the hanging yard. Solitary confinement, or the pound. They had the dome, which I'll talk to you about, the cages, which I'll show you later, the exercise yard, a graveyard, a mess hall, a kitchen, bathrooms, toilets, which of course were a much later addition because originally they were just using buckets, redemption garden, which I will talk to you about later on, and staff accommodation and entry office. So where are we going next? Oh, yep, we seem to be back on track. So I've given you a few examples of the cells. This particular cell was made up to kind of look museum-y. It's how the cell would have looked, back in the day. This particular one is quite a nice cell. It's a little bit bigger than the others, and it's actually got quite a big window. You'll see shortly that some of the other cells were not quite as inviting. This one is not great, although it does look basically clean. And I mean, that tiny window did let some light in. That was a bunk bed. The prisoners did mainly sleep in bunks, especially once it got really full. But this particular one, the prisoners were quite lucky because it was actually had slats rather than a solid bedboard like some of them had. All right, that's just another example of the bunks. They look lovely, don't they? This, you can see the wear and tear on the walls here. I mean, imagine sleeping there. It looks disgusting. I can only wonder how it smelt. You can see that the paint is worn off from so many years of people sleeping there. Now, one investigator did actually sleep in there. Not me, thank God. Now, this is a really interesting feature of the prison because these are actually bed boards. If you didn't have the slats on your bed, you had bed boards like this. And the prisoners would often write on them, graffiti on them. This particular one, the one on the left, at the top left part of the bedboard, there's a whole heap of bands that are written there. And I was reading them earlier. DD Smash and, sorry, I can't get close now, Twisted Sister. There's just a whole, obviously their favourite bands, and they just wrote them all down as a piece of graffiti on their bed. A lot of them did have gang insignia on them, but a lot of them were just messages to people. I mean, you can see there the Lord, religious messages or lots of different ideas were written on the bedboards or scratched in the metal doors, such as here. So the next thing I'm going to explain to you, in case you hadn't noticed, I'm sort of going through the complex, the list of areas in the complex. So I'll show you all these now and just tell you a little bit about it. So the hanging yard, and they did call it the hanging yard, which I think is quite a cute name for such a gruesome area. As I said to you before, Napier Prison was one of the few locations in New Zealand where executions, namely hangings, were actually carried out. And between 1872 and 1889, 4 men were executed by hanging. This one here is just another picture of the wall. Every time we went, over the 11-year period that I managed to go, it changed often. You know, like the first time the gallows were actually there. The next time there were no actual gallows there. It was just they had painted in like the steps up to the gallows. So over the years they did make changes to it. And then this man here, Tom Long, he was New Zealand's official hangman. He had been a prisoner himself, and he is the person who hung all 4 people, not only all 4 people at Napier Prison, he also hung many others around New Zealand. This photo I need to credit to Tiara, the Tiara government site. To that one a bit later on. Then we have the solitary confinement, or the pound. I do have a couple of stories about this area, which I'll tell you about shortly. But you could be put in solitary confinement as a punishment for up to a couple of weeks, and all you actually got to take with you was a Bible. Inside, there were 2 small cells, and a room off the 2 small cells. There was a caged area at the back of this building where the prisoners in solitary could spend a little bit of time outside. Now, I could not believe this. This area here apparently was called the Hole, and it was located behind the pound, and as the most severe punishment, you could be put in the hole for 2 days. There was no door on it. There were just bars or a barred door. It was little. You couldn't stand up. You could only sit down in it. And it was here that Craig Wright told us that he sensed children. And he actually looked quite surprised and said, you know, they put them in here because they were being naughty. So I don't know. I haven't been able to verify the validity of this, but that was put there for some reason. I certainly hope they didn't put people in there.
Probably the very, very naughty children, not the children, but the very naughty prisoners. Adults were also, placed in there, but it was just that Craig sensed children there. It'd be the original solitary confinement, right?
I don't know, because I mean the thing is that it was tight. Like you couldn't stand up. There would be literally just room for one person to sit down in it. Seems pretty.
I think the Hole is beyond solitary confinement. It's the place where,
exactly.
your bad behaviour gets you put.
Yeah.
And remember, people back then are much shorter than we are now. Not saying that they can stand up, but they could probably lie down in there a bit comfortably. Someone said dry storage for wood, but it's like, why would you put bars on the front?
Yeah, and there was no fireplace or anything. There wasn't anywhere. They didn't have fires or anything like that. So anyway, I'll continue, and I will tell you the ghost stories about the areas shortly. This was the cages, and these were this was out the back of the prison, and this is where prisoners who needed to be segregated for recreation or exercise were put. Basically, it was to keep the gangs apart, or if they had people who they just didn't want mixing with the general population, they would go in there for if they were, had when it was outside time or whatever they called it. Now, the cages were overlooked by a cell, which was a little bit bigger than the others, and you can see this one has louver windows on it. Apparently, this cell was used by the wardens to keep an eye on the prisoners in the cell to make sure they weren't trying to kill each other somehow, basically. This was the graveyard, and executed prisoners were buried standing up in the grounds of the prison, and the graves remain on site and are marked by prisoner numbers. And I'll show you later on. I have got a photo of the prisoner, a prisoner number. Hang on. And that's where it is. See where the white fence is? There was cell. This was taken from just outside the cells, and the graveyard is the white picket fence there. Behind that garage is actually the hanging yard. So it was very, very close. They didn't have to take them far. This one here is the exercise yard. It is pretty self-explanatory. It's where the general population, the people who weren't likely to try and kill each other or cause trouble or fights, would actually exercise and take some fresh air. And this is an aerial view of it taken by Ian Quigley from Paranormal Researchers New Zealand, which he took with his drone. So as you can see, it's a pretty bleak place. These are the bathrooms. It was just one large open room. The toilet block was beside it, although originally the prisoners wouldn't have used a toilet block. It was all pretty rustic back then. The last few times we actually investigated here, the bathroom area was not in use because there was no water at all in the area. So the toilets were next door, and they were pretty basic as well. Basically, in the showers and the toilets, there's only like a door, like a barn door, like a stable door, but it only covered the middle of you. So it got a bit interesting. And then when we were there, we basically just had to use a very cold outside basin just for hand washing and for freshening up. But it was so sad because it meant that we actually had to go just down the hill and across the road and use the hot pools to have a shower and a swim. We did that hard. There's also, as part of the complex, or was also as part of the complex, a large mess hall, but that had been renovated into 2 rooms to become a TV lounge on one side for backpackers and a meeting room, which was often where we just put all our stuff during especially public events. Now, here's a story for you. In 2006, reality TV series Redemption Hill was filmed at the prison. You might remember it. It featured 10 wayward teens who were sentenced to time at Napier Prison. As part of their rehabilitation, the series had the young people construct a garden at the back of what was once the death row cells. The garden remained long after the teens had left, and to my knowledge is still there. So that's the prison complex. Now we can talk about the hangings. Now, so that's yet another photo of the the hanging yard. Once again, they've changed the look of it to include a painted gallows on it. 4 prisoners were executed at Napier Prison, and believe it or not, people paid to watch the spectacle. It was 1 shilling to watch from the hills above the prison yard, or to sit on the walls around at the top of the walls around the prison. For 2 shillings, you got to observe the event from the ground level.
That was quite common back in the day. It was called entertainment, Barbara.
Yeah, just awful, isn't it? Imagine how
YouTube of the 1800s.
Yeah.
But do you know if probably a morbid question, do you know if the hanging platform, whether it was a trapdoor or they just kicked out a stool or?
I don't know. I'm not sure, to be honest, because of course the gallows have gone. So yeah, I'm not quite sure how they did it at Napier.
I'd say it would have been a trapdoor, which was the norm.
Well, in the Westerns, it's always a trapdoor, isn't it? Unless it's hanging, unless they put them on a horse. And then
most of the historical prisons in the UK and the USA are trapdoored if they did hangings.
Yeah. Okay, so meet Te Rao Kiriopa. And this man was the first person to face execution at Napier Prison in 1872. Now, Kiriopa murdered a missionary called Carl Sylvius Volkner. He thought that Volkner, along with others, had played a role in the murder of Kiriopa's wife and 2 children. In retaliation, Kiriopa murdered Volkner and is said to have eaten Volkner's eyeballs as utu for the killing of his 2 children. In a significant historical footnote, Kiriopa was actually posthumously pardoned in 2014.
Bit thick and late, isn't it?
I know.
Just a little bit. They also ate body parts to absorb their mana, and then also the belief if you're not whole, you don't end up in the afterlife.
Yeah.
There's a punishment.
Yeah. Well, he definitely ate their Volkner's eyeballs. Yeah. So now these next 3 people, I did try to find images of them, but I could not find an image of them. So I'm going to talk about them. Roland Herbert Edwards was executed in 1884 for the murder of his wife and 4 young children. And they were young children. They were like a newborn baby, a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 7-year-old. Now, this story is actually quite sad because he was an alcoholic and he suffered from delusions. Edwards had been imprisoned a couple of times for the attempted murder of his wife, but was released both times and thought to be of sound mind. So, driven by these delusions, Edwards then bludgeoned his family with a piece of wood and then slit their throats. He was later found naked and bleeding under a railway bridge after attempting to slit his own throat. Edwards claimed that he believed an angry mob of people was about to burn his home, so he killed his family to spare them from the agony of being burnt alive. And I'll tell you, Roland Edwards is also supposed to haunt the prison, but I'll tell you a little bit about that later on. There were 2 other people executed, both in 1889. That was a really good year for Tom Long, wasn't it? So the first one was, and I'm sorry if I pronounced this incorrectly, it was Haira. Sorry, that sounds more Japanese, doesn't it? Chipuri. Haira. Yeah, Haira. Chipuri. And he was a bushman and a shearer, and he was actually convicted of a triple homicide. After gambling his own wages and the wages entrusted by a friend to him, Chipuri sought to recover his losses by robbing the Matahu store. Unfortunately, during the robbery, he fatally stabbed the storekeeper, Frank Pook, and his wife, Jane, and badly injured their infant son, Bertie, who later died of the injuries. 3 days later, he died of those injuries. And Chipuru was hanged later that same year. And then we have Makore Wata. In that same year, Makore Wata was also executed at Napier Prison for the murder of a shepherd called Robert Gollan at Table Cape Mahia. Wata bore a grudge against Gollan, who had accused him of sheep theft. An accomplice testified that Wata hid a gun near Gollan's home and ambushed him and fired 3 shots, killing him before setting his house ablaze. Now, folks, we're up to reported activity.
What everyone's been waiting for.
Well, this is just general activity, okay? All right, so apparitions have been seen at the prison. Locals claim, as all staff and inmates, claim that Kiriopa's apparition still lingers near the death row cells. Roland Edwards' ghost is said to haunt the prison still, with paranormal activity reported around the anniversary of his execution on July the 15th. People will hear footsteps when there is nobody there. I've experienced that personally. You'll see and hear doors opening and closing. Now, the cell doors make a noise. They're heavy, big, heavy doors, and opening them and closing them makes a noise. Now, you get them, actually, you see them open and close by themselves, but other times you just hear it. Like in the night, you'll hear a door open and close, but there's no door moved, or you'll hear a door open or close, but nothing's happened. You check the cameras and nothing's happened. Items have been moved or thrown, and I personally have had experience with that. People report being touched or grabbed, often visitors to the prison in the days when it was open almost as a museum, and fright nights and that sort of thing would be touched or grabbed. Shadows, moving shadows have been seen, reported. There is apparently a black mist that moves around, and I spoke to a staff member who told me about this. She had first-hand experience, and I'll get to that very shortly. And there's also a remarkable number of visitors who have been completely overwhelmed while sitting in cells, to the point that they have panic attacks. And it has been that bad that ambulances have been called because people have been so affected. Now, I'm not saying, when I'm talking about all of these things occurring, it's up to you. It is up to you whether you take it with a grain of salt or whether you believe it fully. I honestly can't say. A lot of these things, personally, I haven't seen, or they've had happened during events where there could be numerous things happening, but it's definitely, reported activity that has happened at Napier Prison. So I can tell you some of the stories. Oops. Okay, I am keeping up with the slideshow. So some of the stories. So some of these events happened at investigations I attended. Others are stories that are recounted to me by staff members at the prison. So I can't make comment on the validity. Okay, I've just told you that, but I've just reread it. This open door in the slide was in what was the woman's wing, where one of the Redemption Hill series girls was sleeping. Now, while she was asleep, she was allegedly picked up, turned over, and dropped back down onto her bed. This very unusual occurrence was apparently witnessed by the girl's twin sister, who was still awake and lying in her bed in the cell across the hall. Now, interestingly, this is also the cell where my Paranormal Research NZ teammate Ian Quigley woke up in the night to discover he was being held down in his bed. It wasn't your typical sleep paralysis thing. He said it was like his sleeping bag had managed to wind itself around him so tightly that he couldn't move at all. So that was quite interesting. If you talk to Ian, he will absolutely swear that he was held down. So there's that. Then we have the stories about solitary. Now, staff actually told us a very intriguing story about this area. There was a prisoner who had been placed in solitary confinement. He had been locked in one of the cells and was the only person in the building. When a warden checked on the prisoner the next day, he wasn't in the cell, but was found in a very distressed state and locked in a high cupboard in the room beside the cell that he had been in. When asked how he got there, the prisoner said that he had no idea. So that's a little bit different. Ian also, our team also had a bit of a strange experience while in the room beside the cells, the room in front of those cells. We were doing a communication session and we were trying to get anything present to knock or to let us know that it was there. And we became aware that there seemed to be a response coming in the form of knocks, and it was behind our newest team member. When we pointed this out and kind of tried to get whatever was there to repeat the knocking, it did it. So the new team member looked like she was about to burst into tears. And so we suggested that she move across the room to stand next to Ian, because we wanted to see if the knocking moved or just what was going to happen. So she moved across the room and was standing beside Ian, and we asked for whatever was there to make a noise again. And yes, the noise had followed this investigator, but this time she said it felt like it was under her feet and she could feel the vibrations under her feet. So she was just explaining that when Ian gave out a yelp, and we're like, what's wrong? And he said it felt like someone had poked him very hard or stabbed him in the bottom of his leg. There was nothing there. We had it on camera. There was nothing there that had poked him. It wasn't that he'd backed into something accidentally. There was no explanation for it. Of course, being a personal experience, you can't really, we did not get any evidence or anything to corroborate the story. That remains a personal experience. But that was really interesting, especially because we had known that there was, something odd about the area anyway. All right, the next one is about the dome. Now, if you remember that the dome was that area was the area in the middle of the complex, the cells. And this is the dome. Now, I'm sorry I haven't got a great picture of it, but you get the idea. It's in the centre of the cell building, and from this room you can go outside to the exercise yard or to any of the 4 corridors that run off it. And it was in here during a night scare event run by Napier Prison that a staff member was sent to sit in a corner awaiting her allocated group to join her. They always started off in the cells at the other end of the prison, and then they would call them out for they would all sit in the cells, and then they would be called out. So they were doing that part of their night, and she was just sitting in the dome waiting for them. So the lights were off, but she could see due to the lights from the nearby corridors being on. As she sat there hoping that her group would hurry up and arrive, she saw what she thought was a black form in the far corner of the room. As she watched, the form turned into a large black cloud and seemed to come closer to her. By then, she was terrified and watched as the cloud turned into a black mass that almost filled the room. As it engulfed her, she thought she passed out, and the next time she knew, the group that she had been waiting for arrived into the dome, and everything was as it had been. She told me that she didn't know what had happened when the mass had engulfed her. And when I asked her if there was any chance that she had fallen asleep while waiting for her group and possibly dreamt what she saw, she was adamant that she hadn't. She explained that it was only around 8:30 p.m. because the night was just starting, and that she was sitting on the cold, hard floor at the time, so didn't think she had fallen asleep. Okay. Then we've got this one. During my first investigation of Napier Prison in about 2013, it seemed like someone or something followed us down a hallway. There was a group of 3 of us, and we were walking down the hallway from the kitchen to the dome. I was following an investigator, and there was another investigator, we'll call him Eddie, was following me. So Eddie stops and says, "Did you hear that?" The guy in front of me and I hadn't heard anything, but Eddie was insistent that he had heard footsteps right behind us, and he was at the back, so he had a better chance of hearing it. So we listen and hear nothing, so we continue walking towards the dome, and this time it's me who stops and looks at Eddie and realises that he's heard it again also. There were definite footsteps behind us. It was hard to hear as there were already 3 sets of footsteps, but it certainly sounded as if someone was walking behind us. We spent time investigating and trying to debunk it, but unfortunately that activity had ceased. They weren't going to do it a 3rd time. Then we have, this is the doorway on the right is what we refer to as Wayne's cell. Now, Wayne was a young gang prospect who was imprisoned as he had taken the blame for a crime committed by a senior member of a gang. Just before the prison closed in 1993, Wayne was found hanging in his cell. It is thought that for some reason he didn't want to transfer to Aotearoa Prison with the other remaining prisoners. People who spend time in his cell are the ones who report having panic attacks, and an investigator sleeping in that cell has felt what felt like someone blow hard into his face. Now this has been preserved by the prison, It's part of a piece of material that was in Wayne's cell. And obviously because the prison was closing, that someone had put it away, and when it reopened as a tourist attraction, they found this and they've actually put it on display. We wonder if it's a suicide note. 1993, Wayne in hell, fuck you. Interesting little piece of information, or, you know. All right. This is cell 2. And during a public event, an investigator spent some time with a small group of the public in the general area of the cell, like in the cell and the corridor outside it. The group took readings, made attempts at communications, and just sat and observed their surrounds, just your normal kind of thing that we do on a public event. Once the group had rejoined the main group for a presentation in the mess hall, the investigator went back to the area for some alone time. She went into the cell and sat quietly. At the time, the lights were off, and it was dark in the cell, but she could still clearly see the hallway outside, as it was a moonlit night. She could also see the cell, kind of like you see it there now. It was dark, but it wasn't really dark. Suddenly, a huge, solid, dark figure stepped into the doorway, making it impossible to see the hallway outside, and the cell became pitch black. The investigator was scared, but being a great investigator, she remained calm and sat and observed. She recalled that the figure was so dark she could not see through it, and that it was so big that it literally filled the doorway. She seemed to think it was more of a humanoid figure rather than the black mass reported in the dome. After a few seconds, the figure dissipated, and the cell and the hallway were back as they had been.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there are some really interesting stories and recounts of things that have happened there. Then we've got, this happened at a public event. Now, there's a group of people, including myself and 2 investigators, in a blackout maze room. Now, this room was literally so dark that we couldn't see our hands in front of our faces. It had been deliberately blacked out. And it was turned into like this series of, it was a maze, but it had been turned into a maze with like walls that were made of black material, basically. So anyway, we're standing there quietly, and suddenly the lady beside me screams at the top of her lungs, and a split second later, I feel something hit my foot. It seems that a stone had been thrown at her back, which then landed on my foot and bounced away. We did find the stone. The odd thing was that we were standing literally just a few centimetres from a solid wall. So we're not sure how something was thrown to hit her in the back. But something was thrown, there's no doubt about that. And it also hit me. I know there's a lot of, possible explanations for it, including perhaps a hoax, but I saw the panic and pandemonium that ensued, and I can tell you that all of those ladies were genuinely terrified. And it is really odd that we were standing so close to the wall, and yet it was a stone, like I said, we found it. It hit her in the back so hard that it came off, bounced off her, and hit me. So that's another quite interesting happening.
Barbara,
now, yeah,
was that in the male wing or the female wing?
That was in what had been death row.
Okay.
Now, no, it's not that. Where is it? Sorry, hang on. That. Oh no.
Is that the one earlier that showed the earthquake one?
No. Oh, this is really sad. No, that's it. For some reason it hasn't stuck. Basil the cat. And I had a lovely photo of him. This is another one of these stories, weird stories, that the staff swear is true. So I'll include it here, but just make what you want of it. Visitors to Napier Prison have been seeing Basil for around 30 years. Basil is a very distinctive looking cat. He's kind of ginger and he's a tortoiseshell, but lots and lots of ginger in him. And his face has half a little black moustache. It looks exactly like half a moustache that starts at the top of his mouth and the middle of his mouth. And the story goes that Basil is the ghost or possibly the reincarnation of a prisoner who died while incarcerated in the prison. The prisoner had his face burnt, and as a result, his moustache would only grow on one side of his face. Apparently, Basil is that prisoner who has remained in the prison in the form of a cat. Very unsure as to how much of the story is legend, but it's a cute story anyway. And apparently, Basil has now finally crossed the Rainbow Bridge, so the story will surely fade.
I'll show you a picture of him.
I actually heard there was 2 Basil the cats, and they were identical.
Well, that could explain. Oh, well done, thank you. Yeah, that could explain it, and you can see his little face. We kind of wondered whether perhaps there was such strong genes that cause that colouring that literally kittens of Basil would look very, very similar to him.
Possibly, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but for whatever, the people insist they have seen him for 30 years. But this Basil has now died. And as far as I know, he hasn't been seen since. But who knows? So this is where where are we? There we go.
All right.
I can't now. Thank you, Judge.
Here we go.
There we go. And sorry about that. This is where I ask questions. Does anyone have any questions or comments or?
This is in relation to Basil.
Anything like?
Yeah, I've just put one up. So tortoises
yes,
are girls. Yes, they are.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
And gingers are normally male.
I know, but not all. My daughter has a ginger cat who is definitely a female.
Yeah, they do happen, but they're quite rare.
Yeah, very rare.
Yeah, exactly.
Who else was lucky to see Mr. Basil in his glory?
Yeah, he's such a sweetie. A really cute little cat.
What, the real live Basil or the ghost Basil cat?
Well, ghost Basil looks exactly like a real live cat.
Oh, the ghost Basil cat.
You're the one who said it.
No, Lois said it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lois is saying she saw the ghost of Basil the cat while she was there.
Who did?
Barbara. There's a little cave near the seaside, right? And supposedly Basil liked to go there. Did you hear about that?
No.
There's a little cave, and supposedly some prisoners hid there at one stage.
Okay. Not sure. I mean, the whole area is just so big and complex. There very likely could have been, because there was the quarry was there. And yeah, there's a lot happening in that particular area. I agree with you, Colette. I'd like to come back as a cat too. Maybe not Basil. Stephen, the strangest thing that I personally experienced at that prison. There are a few, actually. There was, I did see an apparition there. On my very first visit, actually, when I was there, when it was a backpackers with my family, and I was walking from the bathrooms, because the bathrooms worked when it was a backpackers. I was walking from the bathrooms back to my room, and as I walked past the end of the building by the toilets, I saw a man standing there, and he had dark hair, sideburns. He was wearing a pair of jeans and a white singlet. Sort of his arms were relatively muscly, but skinny, and he had his arms crossed. And I looked at him. I thought he was a real person. I looked at him, looked at the toilets, looked back, and he was gone. And there was absolutely nowhere that he could have gone to. And yet he had most definitely been there. So that was a pretty cool thing, actually, that happened. I don't know about strange. I tell you one really strange thing that as a team that we managed to get. In the middle of the night, we, on one recorder and only one audio recorder, even though we did have several going that night, we did record a loud, long scream, male scream that literally did seem to reverberate around one side of the prison. That was pretty weird, because we did have other recorders going, but they didn't capture anything at all. So that was also quite a weird thing to happen. Of course, we caught different EVPs over the years. Some okay, some pretty good, actually. Probably the best one we had, and often, when you're trying to do a communication session, you do tend to get better responses when you're asking questions that might be a bit emotive. And so one of the investigators said, do you like the food here? And as clear as a bell, there's a man saying, no, I hate it. It's like,
wow.
And that was really, really clear. So, there's been some definitely interesting times there. Oh, Tony, cats. Is it common for cats to be ghosts? I've heard quite a few cat ghost stories over the years. Personally, I haven't seen any cat ghosts, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't exist. I don't know. Tracy, you worked as a vet nurse. Did you have any experience with ghosts?
Yeah.
Yeah?
And dog ghosts.
Well, you can't just say and that's
parrot ghost. And I've heard of a parrot ghost.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So what you just saw the cats, or?
Yeah, you just normally you see the tail end of them just disappearing around the side of a door.
Yeah.
And you think, shit, one of the cats got out of the cage, and you go and look, and there's just nothing there.
Oh,
but there was definitely the cat's back end. You can see the back end, the bum, the tail, and the back legs disappearing around the door.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, that is interesting and kind of sad,
Yeah, it is. I actually find it really sad, yeah.
Yeah, but let's face it, they are intelligent, and they're definitely attached to their owners, and they probably do still hang around. I mean, they say that animals will, that they wait for their owners. And I'm a little bit worried about that because it's like I'll be inundated with all these pets.
Oh my God, at one time I had 13 animals. So, I mean, that was just a very short period of my life. All the others, my God.
Yeah, it's like, oh, God, all these
I
dogs.
thought I saw a cat ghost the day after I put down my 17-and-a-half-year-old cat. But I'm not sure if it was a ghost or just another exactly looking cat that came through the cat door that I've never seen before.
Wow. Yeah, I actually did, after we had put our beautiful boy down, I thought I saw him on the windowsill. It was just one of those quick glimpses, and then it was gone. But yeah, I think it probably was him as well.
Bunny's asking, was the recorders, you know how you captured it on one recorder and not the others, were they all different makes or?
Yes, they would have been, because we had been investigating. It was the second night of our investigation, and so each we all had our own recorders going. Unfortunately, I had put mine in the other part of the prison, and the recorder, and there were other recorders going. However, because they were all owned by different investigators, they were all different recorders. So yeah,
and some recorders are better than others as well, Bunny.
Absolutely, yeah.
I guess it's luck of the draw too, if you put it somewhere and you're closer to them.
I was just so annoyed because, I mean, it just would have been so valuable as an investigator too, because I had my hand 4 there.
Hello.
Oh no. I had my hand 4 there, and if I'd managed to capture it on that, it would have been a much clearer recording.
Yeah.
However, it was over the other side of the prison at the time and didn't capture anything of it, which is unfortunate, but hey, that is how it goes with investigating, isn't it?
Yep.
You know that.
Yep. It's a luck of the draw, isn't it? Oops.
Okay.
Sorry. I've just forgot about something. Any other questions for Barb about Napier?
Whee.
I thought you guys would have heaps of questions, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I probably won't be able to answer them.
Yeah, I thought they would have as well.
I'll tell you what, though, it's the most fascinating place, and it's going to be such a loss for Heritage New Zealand, because I'm pretty certain that they're not going to be able to resurrect it as in any usable form as a tourist attraction. I suspect it's going to be demolished because it's the New Zealand government owns it and has always owned it. Actually, it was leased to Marion and Toro, and that rock wall has been a concern for a long time, many years, and the only way they're going to, the actual prison is very rickety. It would be just about impossible to reconstruct.
Well, the last document I read, the last council document I read, which was back in December of 24, they had specialists in.
Yeah.
And they were waiting for the report.
I've seen the report, actually. Well, the list of reports.
No, this is the second report. That was the first report. There's another one that they're waiting on now.
Okay. Well, it wasn't great reading, and it certainly, I suspect it will be demolished. And let's face it, that land is going to be worth a fortune.
Oh God, yes.
There'll be a subdivision on it.
You can bet your bottom dollar some millionaire will build their $12 million house sitting on it overlooking the sea.
Yeah. I'd say it wouldn't be restored. It'd be too expensive.
Full of ghosts.
Exactly. But then, I mean, it's a shame. I mean, New Zealand does this with its heritage buildings. There's that social housing block in Wellington at the moment that apparently they're going to demolish it. It's a heritage 1. It's a heritage listed building category 1, being of very significant value to New Zealand, and yet they've got permission to
we have no care, and there's no preservation of our history at all.
It's just so sad. If anything, there's it's like the owners of historic buildings really are encouraged and sometimes just forced into demolishing the buildings. It was the same with the earthquake proofing of buildings in New Zealand. Now, as the owner of a building that is 2-storied and 160 odd years old, we were sent a letter from the council telling us that we had to, that they would be, checking for earthquake, if we had to have earthquake proofing, and that if we did, we would have something like 2 years to do it. And if we were unable to do it, we would have 5 years, I think it was, to demolish the building. And it's just like, what? That is ridiculous. I mean, I get it, public safety and all that sort of thing. But this is the way that so many buildings in New Zealand are going to go. And it's our heritage, it's New Zealand's heritage is just
we don't have a lot
demolished.
No. We don't have a lot, so we should be hanging on for anything that we've got for dear life, and we're not. We, but they're not. They're just not doing anything, not doing anything, not doing anything, not doing anything. Oh, look at that. It's too far beyond fixing now. Tear it down and then sell the land, subdivide the land, sell it at $1 billion and make yourself a whack.
Yeah.
All the buildings in my town have a sign on them saying that they're not earthquake proof, but they haven't made them to leave or anything. They just have to have a sign warning that it's not earthquake proof.
I think you'll find that they have a certain amount of time to sort it, because you can't just have a not earthquake proof sign on a building for.
But Barbara, it might depend on how many people reside in that area as well.
A lot of it is like if it's a public building or if it's a private building. I know here where I am, if it's a private building, they don't worry. Hey, if you're going to die in your own home because it falls down in an earthquake, they don't seem to mind that. But if it's a public building and there are members of the public who may be involved, then there were very strict rules about what.
Well, it's the same. It's exactly like the chateau. The guy who wants to buy the chateau has actually been stopped from going on the premises to get an assessment done, and they won't allow him.
Yeah.
So they're hedging their bets and they're waiting until such a time as it's beyond saving, and then they're just going to trash that too. And how many people used to stay there? It was a popular place to stay.
It was, and it wasn't just popular place to stay. I mean, when we lived in Waiouru, we used to quite often just drive through the chateau for Sunday lunch and cocktails.
Yeah.
So people from quite a large area would just go and use the facilities there. It's such a loss to New Zealand once again. The prison, the chateau. And it's hurting paranormal investigators.
Yeah.
There'd be
You know
nowhere
where it
left
came
for us
from?
to go.
You know where all this came from? It's a panic from the Christchurch
Yeah.
2011 earthquake.
Knee-jerk
So
reactions.
they're like,
Knee-jerk
oh, we don't want to be liable if this stone building falls on somebody.
Yeah. That's exactly what it is.
But even whether the building is at risk or not, I mean, like even up here, we don't really get like earthquakes. We get like maybe a few aftershocks, but nothing.
Hamilton's great. You get nothing in Hamilton. You get nothing. You feel nothing. Everyone else has an earthquake around you, and you feel nothing.
We don't get
so everything avoids Hamilton, right?
Yeah, it's great. Great. I wish people would avoid Hamilton. I don't live in Hamilton. I don't live in Hamilton, honey.
Actually, I like Hamilton. It's not
apart from Comedia.
I don't.
Well, no, some other places got that award.
No,
really?
Rotorua got it.
Yeah.
Oh, it used to be Hamilton. There must have been a lot of people moved from Hamilton to Rotorua. Either that or groups travelled through to party up.
Hamilton lost that for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. Moving on.
It's not the Comedia Triangle anymore.
Okay. Thank you, Barbara, for a wonderful presentation this evening on Napier.
I do hope people enjoyed it. I just love it. I'm quite passionate about Napier Prison. Been there many, many times and spent so much time there. And I am so saddened by it closing. I'm sad for Toru and his daughter who were running it after Marion passed away. Marion was the absolute champion of the prison. She would have fought to this tooth and nail. It's beyond sad what is going to happen with it. And I'm just so angry that the council and the government, they owned the building, allowed it to happen. It was only quite recently that it was made a Category 1 status heritage building. That was recent, like, I don't know, probably within the last 3 years, maybe. That was quite recent.
It would have been probably within the last 5 because it's on our website as a Cat 1 and I haven't changed it since I first put it up.
It was relatively recent. Yeah.
All right. So
we have one more question.
Oh, we do? Oh, cool.
Yep. I popped it up.
Awesome.
Oh.
The Golden Goose, Barbs?
I know. No, we don't. And that's something that we, as I think we've told you, Tracy and I have discussed. No, we don't have any evidence of anything on video, but then who's to say? I think just cut the on video. We don't have any evidence at all, even from one of the most haunted buildings in New Zealand. Okay, take it away, Tracy.
But wait, when we get Tash building this equipment, we could get something on video, mate.
I'm going to trap something in a box.
Sorry?
Like
all right. Okay, I want to go over. She's going to trap something in a box.
Yeah.
There's
like Ghostbusters.
Hasn't that been tried before?
Yeah, it's called Tennessee Wraith Chasers, and they failed miserably.
Didn't Zachy try that?
Oh,
probably.
He tried everything. Anyway, what are we doing next week? Do you know?
I did. Hang on.
I did too.
We're doing Shadow People.
Oh, yeah.
We're doing Shadow People next week. Now, are we going to live it next week or are we going to pre-record? Because it's up for a pre-record.
We will surprise people.
Okay, we're going to surprise people. So we might be alive. You'll find out. And then the week after that, we're going to have a UK guest speaker on.
Yeah, I'm not sure what we're for that one.
That's on Saturday. We're going to be filming that. after, the week previous. We're going to film it on the Saturday morning because with the time shift, that's what we're going to have to do. And then we're going to talk about something that's really, really interesting on the 25th. We're going to talk about parallel universes and alternative dimensions.
That is cool.
Yeah, so that's going to be quite interesting. And then, so...
Gosh, yes. And then...
On the Friday the 25th, we're going to talk about parallel universes and alternate dimensions, but we got an extra bonus for you that week. On the Saturday night, we're going live from a investigation that we are holding. That thank you to Kels Kavanagh, my lead investigator, who organised it for us. We're going to be holding a Facebook Live, and we're going to take you investigating with us. So Lo Marie's going to be there at the investigation. Stephen's going to be at the investigation. Us three are going to be at the investigation. Susie from Quantum's going to be at the investigation, and Ian from Paranormal Researchers is going to be at the investigation, and Corey from Central Hawke's Bay Paranormal, Stephen's sidekick, is going to be at the investigation. So there's going to be 8 investigators there. It's a huge place. So we're going to be splitting ourselves up and going to various areas. But we will do a Facebook Live on Ghosts in the Paranormal. So if you don't know where Ghosts in the Paranormal is, it's a Facebook group that Quantum runs. That's where we do most of our lives from if we do a live. So head in there and you can watch. Now, we'll send details out, but the location's going to remain a secret until we're there.
It's in New Zealand.
It is in New Zealand, yeah. We're not going anywhere spectacular, like getting on a plane and going, but it is in New Zealand.
It's in New Zealand.
Yeah, it is in New Zealand. But it is spectacular.
It is going to be very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, it's a very large area, so we're going to be investigating for 2 nights, but we'll only probably do the live for 1 night. We'll see how we go, but we'll do the live on that Saturday night, which will be our first night. So you'll get to spend a bit of time with each of us in different areas, and we'll get you to do some monitoring of some places that we're looking into.
Yeah, we'll probably leave you somewhere spooky and ask you to let us know if something's happening.
Absolutely.
We'll get you working.
So just don't forget, next Friday, 8 o'clock, it'll either be a live or it'll be a pre-record, one or the other. You can watch it or you can join in, whichever we do. And we'll see you there.
Yeah. Sure. Well, have a great weekend, everybody.
Keep warm, guys. Night.
Good night. Yeah.